Hello world of YouTube and welcome to another episode of Redacted, the show where I take a look at records that have a solid foundation but a spotty execution and making a smoother listening experience out of it all. And this month I was going to tackle this band regardless and was pulling together an episode featuring two albums of theirs that I really enjoy. But ultimately, when looking at their discography, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Both records really stand so strong on their own, and even though they were released within a calendar year of each other, they just didn't feel like they were part of the same package. They're two different sides of a coin, even if they are the two records that kind of put the group even more so into the public consciousness, and were their debut in a sorts if you don't count their mixtape, so it kind of tied into the entire theme I've been trying to do with a handful of Redacteds this year. But instead, I'm taking a look at two records from this group that were meant to be paired together and represent two sides of this chaotic coin that the band throttles in creatively, but stand so starkly against each other that it's jarring to me that they're paired together into one package that is one of their best collections of songs they've ever released, but I took it upon myself to try and pull together and bring both sides into one harmonious experience. I'm talking about the heavily broken up into two portions of On the Moon and Jenny Death by the California noise rap trio Death Grips, that was compiled together into a project called The Powers That Be.
Inanimate Sensation.
Now, I've reviewed Death Grips' discography, and when I reviewed the discography, I reviewed both of these sides separately and gave them their own points on the list because they were released like years apart from each other because there was a lot of, I guess, complications behind the scenes when pulling together the second half of this experience, Jenny Death. But when it did finally come out, amidst all of its hype and even a pocket instrumental project released between both parts, the entire listening experience feels all the more jarring because both sides are creatively channeling different things. You know, you've got side A, On the Moon, which feels like some continuations of threads planted in government plates with its heavy vocal samples laced throughout it, but instead of sampling their frontman MC Ride, they instead sampled Bjork and created a handful of instrumentals built around sampling Bjork's voice in so many different ways while MC Ride does his typical thing. And Jenny Death is sort of a pillaging forth into where the back half of their career would go by being a little more on the nose with a punk influence, a hardcore influence, lots of guitars are added into the mix at points, while also digitally pillaging forth into more intense, abrasive atmospheres that they would further experiment on records like Bottomless Pit and Year of the Snitch. And it's weird to think that these records are meant to be paired together because they've got different things that they're trying to do, and yet, when spinning them together, it makes sense. It just feels like a complete portrait of the band Death Grips. This led to my overall goal of the Redacted to being bringing these even more intimately together by chopping up both albums, rearranging the sequencing while keeping some pockets of sequencing relatively intact, and show off what both sides have going on in spades, while also trimming some of the tracks that I just don't think come together all that well. With that being said, my version of The Powers That Be is 15 tracks and runs at 1 hour and 7 minutes long. I'm going to go ahead and shift into talking about the track listing, why I laid out the track listing and placed the sequencing how I did, along with going over some of the tracks that I cut and why.
Up my sleeves, 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 up my
Black quarterback. Oh, seven, King of Pentacles. I'm sailing like it's money. Dirty money, Sergeant General. Big dipper, big dipper, big dipper, big dipper, big dipper, big dipper. Break nails in the face of the United States. Break nails in the face of the United States. Break nails in the face of the United States. Break nails. I'm sure you want me to. My shadow's on to you. Voila, voila. I can't make you like what? Just a moan to the powers that be. Powers that be. Billy, yo. Raw, yo, boy, yo. Come try it out whenever you want it. Last night, 3:30 in the morning, dead on my front.
Sad Cum BB.
Full disclosure, you're going to be getting more webcam interstitials throughout this Redacted than you normally would, because while I talk a lot about mood and pacing and why I place things where they were from like a song-to-song soundscape pacing perspective, I don't really talk about much about the lyrics, which I do have purpose for why I picked some of the songs that I did, especially in the case of some planting and payoff moments, and just generally trying to pick songs that hammer home Death Grips' whole image and style that they put in a lot of their lyrics. You know, there's songs that delve into racism and this sort of paranoid feeling and even deconstructions of celebrity culture and all that sort of stuff, and really getting dark in some moments from a personal perspective. And all of them I kind of put for a good reason, or at least a lot of them I did, and I never really talked about them all that much. So you'll be seeing a lot of my face. I'll put it like that. While I think Up My Sleeves is a great opener for On the Moon, I don't think it's quite the stage setter for a double album as it may seem. And in fact, I don't even think the opener to Jenny Death is the best opening track from that record. I feel like Inanimate Sensation, the first slice we got of Jenny Death, should have been the opener for this record, full stop. Not only because the feels like just putting your pedal to the metal as you drive headfirst into the madness that is this project. It is this loud, abrasive, 6-minute stomper that just continues to melt the listener into this goo that is so, just, I don't know, great at showcasing the abrasiveness that this album is aiming for. Because even amidst the sample usage done by Bjork, they do a good job in the sequences where they chop it up and make it super erratic that I feel like embodies the same punk intensity and hardcore intensity seen on Jenny Death. And I just kind of wanted to start with one of the most aggressive foots forward with Inanimate Sensation. I mean, that drop when MC Rod comes in with the Inanimate, it's so just ear-grabbing and attention-holding in the best way before leading into what I would say are two great showcasings of the Bjork sample usage, with another sequencing choice I would have made of On the Moon with Up My Sleeves going into Black Quarterback. I think that Up My Sleeves' intensity is really ear-grabbing and matches the energy from Inanimate Sensation, and it sort of bleeds really well into each other. I also feel like it acts as a good sort of continuing point of delving further in the madness from Inanimate Sensation by deconstructing celebrity culture and all that sort of stuff, sort of showcasing a little more of a tongue-in-cheek side to Death Grips' writing that almost feels like a compliment to the beast of what was introduced on Inanimate Sensation. I also feel like it bleeds really well into Black Quarterback. The end of that song, the sudden end of that song throttles really well into MC Ride's intro in Black Quarterback, and I feel like that song is a good showcasing of not only how fun the chopping up is going to sound, because the sort of melody vocal hook in the lead, in the chorus or the hook of this song is very catchy, and it sounds really, really good. It's just a nice groove, and it's also a shorter song to kind of be a little lean pocket for the album to ride into. It also continues some more of that writing from Up My Sleeves incredibly well, and I think that Black Quarterback is another great companion to Up My Sleeves for that very reason. Before it goes into another fucking barn burner with Turn Off, the lo-fi guitars that intro that song, again, play really well off of the end of Black Quarterback before the song's energy picks up tenfold and you get back into the stomping, aggressive sounds heard on Inanimate Sensation. It's a great moment, and I feel like, again, the meltdown on that song, whenever the song gets super glitchy, also kind of mirrors what's been going on with the Bjork samples. It also lyrically acts as a good lead-in into Billy Not Really, the song that follows it, because similarly to a lot of the other punk-driven tracks, it feels like a stage setter, a mood setter, an atmosphere builder with some lean or some aggressive punk tendencies. So tracks like It and I Break Mirrors on My Face in the United States feel like they sort of exist to enhance the overall mood of it from a lyrical perspective as well. Before going into another vocal sample chopped up tune of Big Dipper, a fucking trunk knocker that has such potent low end to get the listener a little more kinetic and moving after the album kind of crushes you and compresses you. This is the moment where you spring back up and just bounce to Big Dipper. It's another great song from Side A that I think is fantastic and I wanted to bring into the fray. Before bringing in some lean punk energy with I Break Mirrors on My Face with the United States. It is a really good song that I feel like is one of the most traditional punk songs Death Grips have ever written, but I think they execute it fantastically, and I kind of use it at this point in the record to just kind of carry the buoyancy from Big Dipper into a lot more of a leaner driven energy that I then fade really well into the tight kinetic groove of Voila. A song that starts off with this kinetic, intimate feeling that sort of, again, bleeds really well from the potent intensity of Break Mirrors on My Face before getting a little slower paced and more, grand in scope that fades really well into the title track of the album, The Powers That Be. And this song kind of helps throttle the sonic palette into the album into a much more synthetically coded atmosphere. The ambience and the background of the song, along with the stomping intensity, helps sort of set a better stage and scope and tailor the scope ever so slightly, because from there it goes into the more synthetically sample woven Billy Not Really, another lower key vocal track. And in the case of Billy Not Really and Big Dipper, I have sprinkled throughout the track listing because I feel like they add to the crypticism that Death Grips are also known to write from. While they do have more overt points in both this album and other albums in the past, they do have some songs that sit in this sort of cryptic layer that showcase MC Riot as a songwriter incredibly well. That I feel like also has some great, again, energy just throttling the listener before going into just a bop of another buoyant song with Pss Pss. I love the weird samples and very, again, No Love Deep Web adjacent style that the production's going for on that song. It's another point on the record to just sort of carry the energy from Billy Not Really and The Powers That Be into an atmosphere similarly more akin to Voila. Plus, in the case of Pss Pss, it's the song that has Have a Sad Cum BB also lyrically referenced, so it almost feels like a tie-in to the last song on the album. That I used as sort of a small tweak to bring to the track listing by putting the song that it actually comes after in the original track listing after it with Why a Bitch Gotta Lie. And I just wanted to use this moment as sort of adding a little more, edge and a digital aggression into the mix, because the title track has some aggressive potency, but it has more ambience in the background that I kind of danced around in the following couple tracks. And I wanted to use Why a Bitch Gotta Lie to sort of ramp up that intensity a bit more, adding more of that glitchy punk style that's been on this record so far, reintroduce it back into the forefront, because from there, I go to the one real stretch from the original that I kept, because I think Centuries of Damn on GP and Death Grips 2.0 is easily one of the best, 3-track combos that a back half of an album has ever had. I feel like the screeching background ambience from Centuries of Damn comes in really well after Why a Bitch Gotta Lie, and it's a textbook example of how to write a late album track. It's got this chord progression that just sort of feels like it's building up to some finality, and it has this sludgy groove that feels like the grinding breaks after the energy was kicked up, while keeping that intensity intact, before completely just melting into the static fuzz of On GP. Again, it's just a brilliant transition that I think works incredibly well, while also picking itself back up and feeling you sort of crawl out of this static sludge. It also almost feels like the band winding down lyrically. You know, Centuries of Damn has a bit more of a normal song structure, and On GP is a pretty dark song. Like, MC Ride sounds like he's in a very bad place amidst all of the production, and it almost feels like it's a sort of cast off lyrically to the band as they were before Death Grips 2.0 happens, which is the closer on the original, but not on this, for a very specific reason, because it is a great embodiment of the future of the band. It feels like the proverbial computer booting back up and assaulting you with these breakneck electronics that they would again expand on tenfold in the back half of their career. But I feel like if this is the transitional point in the band's career, and you could see Centuries of Damn through Death Grips 2.0 as them driving into the horizons, busting through their old shell. Have a Sad Cum Baby is the rear view moment where they're looking back and they're seeing just what they're leaving behind. It feels like a shit posty song that uses the Bjork sample incredibly well, but it feels like the sort of anticlimax that this album sort of deserves for the sort of shitposty style of promotion that went behind this. Hell, Fashion Week's entire existence is an embodiment of that with the whole Jenny Death When thing. And so I felt like it was fitting. You know, it's Death Grips. They have a sense of humor, and I could totally see them in an alternate timeline ending this project with Have a Sad Cum Baby. But that's my version of the Powers That Be. Now, when looking at the Powers That Be, there were only 3 songs that I cut, and the only reasons why I cut them is because while they do add a lot to the sonic palette of this project, the aggressive drums on Say Hey Kid also feel like a slice of where they would take their sound, but I just cut it because I couldn't find a way to fit it in the pocket in a way that I thought worked. The same happened with Fuck Me Out. I like the groove of that song's core, but I just cut it for the sake of I just couldn't find a place to keep it on here. And Beyond Alive is sort of the same thing. While I love how intense Beyond Alive is, I love how it does feel like a good bridge between the title track and Centuries of Damn on the album proper. I sort of use Why a Bitch Gotta Lie for the same reason. But I like those songs. I just cut them for the sake of the experimentation of my version of the Powers That Be. What did you think of my version of the Powers That Be? If you would like to listen to it, linked in the description, our playlist for YouTube and Spotify if you'd like to check it out. Let me know your thoughts on this version of it in the comments down below. If you like this video, be sure to give it a like. If you want to see more of my music, gaming, and general nerdy content, be sure to subscribe. Special thanks to my patrons if you would like to join the ranks to get early access to content, exclusive content, or to help drive the community. It's linked in the description. I'm going to get out of here, though. Thank you again so very much for watching. I've been Viral Rack. You guys have good days, lives, and situations, and I'll see you another day.
You